Hello Internet, welcome back to our binary clock app. In this video, we are going to be looking into converters. Right now, this entire binary clock we have is represented by a list of lists of Boolean values. So there's 6 lists inside of the initial list, and each of those has lists of Boolean values, so we know what to draw and how many. The problem is, right now, all of that is kind of happening. It's all kind of happening in our converter, or in our controller. So what I think we can do is we can actually write a converter so that we can just pass in a date time and then it will do the rest. And so if we do that, I think we can get a much better value or much better result. The actual app itself shouldn't change, but what we actually have to do in our app should make everything simpler, because we'll be able to separate out converting everything into this visual thing from what our app is actually doing. Because right now that's kind of combined, and we want to avoid that as much as possible. We want our app logic to kind of sit off in its own little corner, and everything you see to kind of be in its own other little corner. That way, if we need to change how everything is shown, we can do that, and we don't need to actually play around with the actual app logic, because theoretically we know that works. If we're changing the view, we know our app logic works, and so we can keep that the same and just modify how things look. If we want to just keep how things look and change the app logic, we can do that without having to worry about changing the view. If we mingle those two things, then things become more complicated. So we're going to try to remove that here. So let's walk through the code. Can stop that. So we have a main view model that is displaying a private IEnumerable of Booleans. IEnumerable is just an abstraction on a generic list. It just means this is a collection of things. So what we want is we actually want to call this just the time, I think that should work. So if we call this the time and switch this to the time as well, then, do you mind? It's quite annoying. Sorry that I'm right above a relatively major street, so it kind of, that happens. But anyway, moving on. If we change everything to time, we can also change this. This doesn't need to be of IEnumerable type. Let's just make it a date time, just a standard date. And so if we do that again, not a time date, that doesn't exist, a date time. So we have that. If we plug all of that in, we should be able to get to our main page. And we have all of this crazy conversion stuff. All of this is going away, and it's going to go into a converter. What we can do instead is just do the time equal to the current time, which means this entire function probably can go away. And we'll just keep all of this here as kind of a resemblance of what we already had. So that's all commented out. And so all this is doing then is just setting our date time, our current time, to the time in our main view model. Then if we go to our main page, we have a, where was it? Items control. So this is going to be bound to that time data. We're calling it time now. The issue with this is not going to work. The problem is we now have a date time, and well, if I run this, you'll see what happens. It's not going to turn out the way you would expect. Oh well, I don't know what you would expect, because this doesn't really make any sense. We're trying to create a list of lists of a time, and yeah, it's throwing exceptions and being all You can't do that. That's bad. Well, yeah. Okay. Yeah, value does not fall within the expected range. That makes sense because we're trying to render a time. So how we fix this is there are these converters. We already have one actually. We have a Boolean to brush converter, which takes, we're actually using that to actually render either white or semi-transparent. What we can do is kind of copy this and then just make it a little bit more applicable to what we're actually working on. So let's do that. If we make a new class, we'll call it our datetime to Boolean list converter. So we have that, and then we can just copy. I guess it's best to just copy. I don't think there's any reason not to in this case. So do that. We're extending an I-value converter. And let's import that. We don't need these brushes because that was related to the brush bit. And then we don't need any of that either. So let's actually pull out what we commented out in the previous section, and then we can drop it into here and plug it in there. So walking through a conversion process again, this is a converter. It accepts a type of value, and then from that value it creates a new target value. My convention has always been, what is the type you're passing in? And then it's to, and then the expected result. So we're passing in a date time, and we expect a Boolean list to come out of it. We actually expect a list of Boolean lists, but we can leave that little nitpick out of it. So undo that, and then save our result and return it. So I just totally lost what I was thinking of. I don't know what yes, sorry, that didn't need to happen. So what we need to do is we need to convert this into a date time. And I think we still want it to be nullable because a date time is actually a struct value. You'll see it says it's a struct. And so difference between structs and classes in C# is that structs are value types, which means I guess the best description of it is they're immutable. You can't change a struct. If you change it, it actually creates a separate version of it. So they're completely immutable types. Compare that to classes, which are reference-based. So if I pass like a list, which is a reference to that list, if I have that reference in multiple places, changing it in one place causes it to change in that other place as well. That isn't true with structs. And there's a few other things that you can't do. You'll notice there's no setters here. So there's that. That doesn't really impact us. The only thing is structs can't be null. So you need to make it nullable, and you do that with this question mark. A question mark after a type means that field is nullable, which means it's actually stored as a nullable date time. That's the actual class that it will look like. The shorthand is just a question mark, but you can type out the full name if you feel like it. I don't. So we convert that into our current time. And then if our current time has a value, so again, we're using as here, so it'll be null if our conversion fails. So if it is not null, then we know we converted successfully into a date time. And then we can take the value of that and actually use it here. So I'm going to do actually converted date time. I think that's probably best. because if we use the converted date time there, we can have a current time a current time equal to the converted date time dot value. And that just removes having to call dot value on all of those instances. We don't really need to do that. And I think this gets us where we need to be. We've got our same logic that we had in the last video for converting everything into seconds, minutes, and hours. We're converting into our enumerable list again, and then we're just returning that. And if it doesn't work, we throw an exception. So this should never happen as long as we pass in a date time to this field, which means I can go here and clean up our old code. And we actually don't need any of that. We can just drop this tick to literally just update the time. So this entire method is gone. So we're losing a bunch of code there. That's good. And then if we go to our main page, we need to actually do a little bit here. And so what we want is we want to do a page and add some resources to this. Resources are, I guess, they're things that aren't drawn so much as they're values and things that exist in there. So we want to actually create a reference to our converter, our date time to Boolean list converter. Once we create that, date time to Boolean list converter. This is going to yell at me because it can't find it. So let's actually import that. It's going to add our XML namespace. It's going to just call it converter. That works for me. And we just need to give this a key. So you just do X key and then the key you want to give it. Date time to Boolean list. That should be good. We'll keep it all caps because I believe that's the standard. And then all we have to do is, now that we have that key, we can actually reference it everywhere else. So we've got our time binding here. If I pass it through a converter, we should be able to use it. So I'm going to use a static reference to this resource, which means there's a reference to the resource. We're not creating a new converter or anything. We need to say, I want to reference this and I want to reference it statically. There's a few other things. We covered those in a previous video, actually in this series. So hopefully you've already seen it. And if not, then go back and watch the previous episodes to catch up. But anyway, we're going to use a static resource to this, which is, we're just referencing it. And so theoretically, when we set the time here, we're going to pass that into our date time converter. It's going to come in here as the value. It's going to run through all of this logic. And then instead of our control seeing that value we were bound to, it's actually going to see the result here. And so theoretically, nothing has changed because our result is an enumerable list of enumerable Booleans, which means we've just got our list of Booleans again. So that type has not changed and it should be the same. So theoretically, everything should still work, I think. And yeah, cool. And so we're doing exactly what we were doing. And the result is the same. We didn't gain that much from this. It's not something that our user is going to be like, ooh, I'm really glad they did that. They're not going to know. But the cool thing about this is we gain a lot. Because we did that, look at what our actual code looks like. So if I open up this main page, our clock is literally 5-6 lines of code. That's nothing. And so there's nothing going on here. And that makes it really easy to understand this. And it means we can just focus on our application logic and just get that done. We don't need to worry about anything else. It's just our application. And because it's just our application, we can reuse that too. That didn't transition the way I anyway. And so the thing is we can actually abstract these things out. So if we need that clock to tick somewhere else, we can use that date time and pass that around there as well. And we can use it. If we need to represent something that is a different date time, we don't need to write a separate converter, or we don't need to write some extra function somewhere else to convert it into a list. We already have that. So long as we have a date time, we can represent that in our binary clock. It doesn't have to be something that's constantly updating. It can be anything we want. As long as it fits into that date time, I guess, signature or template, we can use it. And that's pretty powerful. So hopefully this is interesting. Hopefully I debated doing this video because I wasn't sure. It's not new stuff. It's more maintenance stuff almost. But I thought it was an interesting idea because this is what computer science is all about, really. It's all about taking a relatively simple thing like this and making it something that you can maintain for years or decades. And so this hopefully gets us on that path, and hopefully it puts us in a place that is better for the app itself, because since everything is separated, we can change things more easily because we don't need to worry about, oh, I changed this conversion and now everything is broke. We don't need to worry about that. We know as long as we have a date time, we can accurately represent that date time here. And that's pretty cool. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. I don't know if I'll do more of these kind of videos. I think it makes a lot of sense, especially as like defects and things start rolling into the apps. I think it makes a lot of sense to actually look a little bit more into how to maintain what we're building. And so that may become more, or if people don't like it and don't watch it, then we may shift into something else. But here's us trying. So if you guys liked it, I'd love to hear it, because otherwise we may not do more of these. So let me know. There's a comment section down below, or there's a subscribe button, and either of those help me out. So hope to hear from you guys, and if there's anything you guys want me to improve, let me know about that as well, because I'd love to hear it. So until next time, see you, internet.